Well, welcome to the Consciousness Transformed tape group, practitioner tape group. Thank you so much for showing up, for joining today. It's great to have you here, joining in the energy of a consciousness transformed, recognizing the unity, the unification of us in the one mind, one consciousness. And that's what we're celebrating, in fact. That's why we're here. That's why we listen to Joel. That's why we do the meditation. It's all to remember that as an active, momentary remembrance. Literally, it is happening in this moment. That's where we're connecting with. Leave everything behind, what is past, what is gone, and allowing ourselves to let this consciousness of us be opened for the direct communication or communion with what is. And so I'm really happy that you joined, because it is like you can't do this. I cannot do this without you. It is you need your brother in that sense to recognize there's only one of us. And so it's great that you join in that, and that you're present here, that you decided to take time to let that specific occurrence take place. And the occurrence is a recognition, not a change at all, but it's a recognition of what is. And that's lovely to celebrate and to come together for. Now, today we have a video of Joel, of an audio, basically, a podcast, as I call it now. It's like the podcast of Joel. And this time it is attaining spiritual consciousness, 544B. So we continue in the succession of tapes from 1964 of Joel. And so here, the inspiration for today's meeting is basically from the last two paragraphs of the last two moments that Joel is sharing with us in the tape. And I use that as the inspiration to use the book, Consciousness Transformed, and taking parts from different talks, combining them together in a beautiful collection, spirit-related expressions, because that's really where Joel is talking about in the last 5 minutes of the talk. But I use it as the first start of it. Now, of course, we start first with the meditation, and the meditation is very comforting. You are now abiding in God. You are communing with the Spirit within you. You are one with the saints and sages of all time. The Master must have meant this when he said, "Abide with me." Not me as a person, but Christ consciousness. The only way you can abide in Christ consciousness is to abide without words or thoughts, or in faith in anything, or fear of anything. Being, just being. God is being my being. But the minute I have words and thoughts, I have a God and me. Unless the words are being poured into me, rather than thought by me. God's thoughts are not my thoughts. Therefore, you must stop taking thought in order to receive God's thoughts. My ways are not your ways. You will never know my ways while you are trying to know your ways. Abide in me. Rest in receptivity. There's a spirit in man. You see it here. There's a spirit in man. And this spirit is just as much in the most evil of man as in the most humanly good man. But this spirit must be awakened. Awake, thou that sleepest. Awake. Rise. Pick up thy bed. This is a dormant influence, the spiritual influence. It must be awakened. And with all of the help that we may receive, the major responsibility rests with us to bring ourselves to the point of conviction that we wish to be made whole, spiritually whole, that we wish to live our lives by the grace of God, not by personal sense, because in proportion as we reach that point, our teacher appears. The divine consciousness, which is manifest in some individual, somewhere on this side of the veil or the other, reaches us, and we are set free, just as Saul of Tarsus was reached by his teacher, even though his teacher had passed beyond this veil. It's like this was in the last paragraph, and it's like, yeah, that's a great start, Joel. That's a great start of tomorrow's talk, who knows. So it's like, well, let's do that today then. So I went for the book Consciousness Transformed and found some expressions, spirit-related expressions, that in fact hold the same message as what Joel shares here. So this is about how does spirit work in our life? How is spirit coming to us in our life? How is that actually taught by Joel? And well, let's take a look at that. So that's what I'm going to share with you now. So some expressions. The inner flame. Let the I, which is omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipotence, come through. So this is Joel instructing, in fact. Let the I, which is omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, let this come through. Be still and know that I am God. Then be still, Joel says, in the presence of his spiritual realization, the material existence loses its claim of power. In your consciousness, there's a spirit in man, so be still and let it flow. Be still and know that I am God, and beside me there's no other. So this is Joel's instruction, in fact, in which he says, well, let this come to you, so be still. And what we saw, get out of this, so what we saw in the meditation, it says too, is like, God's thoughts are not my thoughts. Like the thoughts that I'm thinking during the day, for instance, as a human being, the thoughts that I'm thinking are not God's thoughts. So, but you can let God's thoughts come to you. And how is that going to be given to us? And this is the practice of what we're doing. Like we take time to become still, to let this come to us, we say. But then in all the practicality of it, it is like, well, then you have to be still. You have to calm down your mind. You have to take it easy, relax in that rest, in fact, first. And because you cannot say, like, you cannot step into that consciousness right away unless you're familiar with that by releasing. Like, this is always what comes back, the release of the thought about yourself. Releasing the thoughts about God. Releasing the thought about what you think you're doing. Release the thought of what you think we are doing right now. It's like, if you release the thought, literally energy flows to you, because you don't lose it. It's not going to be drained by your considerations. It's not going to be drained by your concerns. It's not going to be drained by letting it dissipate into the future or the past. In other words, it stays present. And we see this later too. It's like it is just present. And you, by not letting it disappear into what isn't anymore, like the past, the future, your concerns, your comparisons, your competition, your sense of competition, your defenses. Imagine that you would not use that to defend yourself or to protect yourself or to do all these human activities. Imagine that you don't do that. How much energy is left for you to just allow that to just be there without you doing anything with it? It's like that. That's really how it works. You know this when you let go of a thought. If you really let go of a thought, it's literally a shift in your frequency. Like, you suddenly feel like, wow, I'm liberated of something. Like, all that energy flows back to you. And that is so beautiful. Now, and this has nothing to, so everything that's occurring has nothing to do with your surroundings. It has nothing to do with the guy out there, or who knows what kind of activities you are fulfilling. Like the recognition of the I, of this, that is given to you as a recognition, is not coming from anywhere else but within you. So in order to have your consciousness completely open, you practice this, releasing ideas, relaxing into it, opening your consciousness. So we say that, but how do you do that? Oh, how do I open my consciousness? Relaxing my mind, releasing my thoughts. And then what? Be still. Listen. Be still. Come into it like a receptivity. I say it sometimes too, like this is like an anticipation of the next moment, like as if the next moment is being born in any moment now. And you feel that anticipation for the next moment and literally become a beholder of this birth of the new moment. And this is how you can see yourself, like you're present in that. If you are literally a beholder of this, the birth of the next moment, which is really like a rebirth, of course. So this is what Paul of Tarsus was experiencing. His communication with his teacher, his communication with God, his direct revelation, being knocked off a horse by so much light and joy, by so much overwhelming grace. He literally has never been the same again. And so it is with you, with allowing this to come to you in whatever way, but it needs to come, like it cannot come in the dark, so to speak. It can only come if you want it to come to you. That is your decision, you could say. So if your mind is all cluttered up with all kinds of ideas or concerns, there's no space for it. Simple as that. There's no space for a different experience because you're already set. This is what I value. This is what I want to keep. This is what I defend. This is what I am. Now all this, that keeps returning as a practice, and that's why we remember it. It's like almost every week I'll certainly come back to it, for sure, because this is the fundamental thing that helps you, in fact, to let your consciousness be opened for the grace of God, for your natural inheritance, like for that what is already yours, for that what is always with you and that you cannot lose. no matter how lost you feel. So that's why this is so essential in our moment together. Seeing that knowing has nothing to do with an action of you. This knowing, be still and know that I am God, is an experience. So it has nothing to do with your concepts about what you think that God is. Joel invites you to an experience of knowing, not to figure it out, not to understand what God is, no, to experience something that goes beyond your understanding, but is very much part of you. This is an expression, part of an expression that you find in every book. I think that at least Acropolis Books is publishing of Joel. But I thought, let's take a look at it, because what's going on here? Illumination dissolves all material ties and binds men together with the golden chains of spiritual understanding. It acknowledges only the leadership of the Christ. It has no ritual or rule but to define. Impersonal universal love. No other worship than the inner flame that is ever lit at the shrine of spirit. Yeah, this inner flame, of course, is within you. The shrine of spirit is within you, like within your temple, your sanctuary. There's an altar. And this altar, if it is, say, not covered up by all kinds of ideas of you, it is completely empty, and there's a flame, there's an inner flame always present. So illumination dissolves all material ties and binds men together with the golden chain of spiritual understanding. So this spiritual understanding goes beyond human understanding. So whatever you try to figure out what that means is not what it is. So we're talking here about experience. It acknowledges only the leadership of Christ. Literally, it is Christ consciousness that you are, of course, but it's more like it's Christ consciousness in direct communication with its source, with God. It has no ritual or rule but to define. It doesn't come with laws or this is how you should behave or this is what you should do. No, it comes with a divine, impersonal, universal love, because that is what you are. That is what Christ is. No other worship than the inner flame that is ever lit at the shrine of spirit. Now, I'm sure, this is the interesting thing, so I'm sure that you have read this in one of Joel's books, for sure. Like, you have read this, but did you get to the depth of it? Like, or is it just a nice expression? Like, is it just a nice expression to read and you say, yeah, that's right. And then you miss it, because Joel put it in, at least Acropolis Books, like it is being put in there as a reminder, but not just a reminder. Like, all of this has nothing to do with human understanding or concepts. So it's like, here's actually a portal being offered. It is the inner flame recognition within yourself. In fact, your focal point for your practice and your affairs and your action of thought. Like, everything is directed towards your withinness in this, recognizing that is you, going to the I am every time you remember to do so. That is our practice. That changes everything. So that's not a ritual. It's a returning back to your senses. You could say, to your sense part of yourself. Of not to your senses, but you know what I mean. It's like literally you're being brought back into your sanctuary, into your altar, back to your inner flame. So whatever was in the way for that. So I practiced of returning back to that on a daily basis, a couple of times a day at least. Like that would be the minimum to do that. Not that there's a rule. No, there's an attraction to it. That's why you do it. There's an inner motivation to keep this up. Literally to let this happen to you. And that is the offering that Joel gives you. And in every book, this is coming back. I love that. I love that. So the spiritual understanding is basically Joel's words. He uses it as spiritual understanding. It is basically entering into the realm of knowing, which has nothing to do with human understanding. And that's good to know, because then in fact you look further, you go deeper. You want that experience to be whole. You want God's grace to be shown to you in its fullness. You want to come to a recognition of your illumination. You want to have a Christ recognition. Now why don't you let your Christ mind be whole? Let it become whole unto yourself. And so then that is in fact what Joel invites us here to. I will stop right there because we continue with another expression. And here's one. Just let me become acquainted with the still small voice. Just let me become acquainted with the still small voice, for where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Not in order, and here it is, not in order to do anything to anything, but just to know thee aright. It does its own work. We just release it. Here it is. We just release it. We release our ideas. We release what isn't truth. We release what we think all this is. Just let me become acquainted with the still small voice, for where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Not in order to do anything to anything, not to say, get your things done. No. Just to know thee aright. It like literally it stops there. There's the recognition. There's the liberty. Now what do you do with that liberty? Nothing in that sense. You don't use that freedom to do anything. You're not using it as you would as a human being. Telling your neighbors about it, that you found it and that the neighbors don't have it. Or whatever you do with that. It's like, no, this is, you discover this for yourself. And what do you do with it? You experience it. That's all. You release all your ideas about what you think you should do with it. You release, like literally everything is going to be shown. If there's anything to be done, it will be shown to you in its own time. See, this is very basic, but very fundamental and very good instruction of Joel. So that's why I read it to you. I must know thee aright. And you see how Joel is so connected to Scripture. Like literally, all the words are Jesus' words. I must know thee aright. I am listening for thy voice. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. That's the attitude. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. I must know thee aright. I'm listening for thy voice. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Whatever power is flowing from the still small voice is under God. But Joel says, this is the attitude. I must know thee aright. I'm listening for thy voice. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. And of course, you have heard this before, but it is a great instruction. Now, if you practice this, everything changes. If you are receiving this, everything changes. because suddenly there is one that flows through you. Like literally, spirit is flowing through you. So here's one more. Health is in spirit manifested as body. The body is a form, and there's no health in it. The health of the body is the health of spirit. So until we look to spirit for health, harmony, intelligence, we are looking amiss. Intelligence is omnipresence. So is health omnipresence, because intelligence and health are qualities or activities of spirit. The spirit is the creative principle of man and his body. The spirit is the creative principle of man and his body. And what is his body? An idea of man in his mind. Like, so, because this is tricky to share. I know, this is tricky to share, because now you might think like that there's a creative power in your body. You might think that is spirit directed too, and that there's a direct link between God and your body. Yeah? It's like, it is so important, especially here in this moment together. It's so important to hear this right, and that is like, it takes a moment to let that settle in. But it's like the body as you see it, as you have given it meaning, as you have given it attributes, as if it can do something by itself, as if it grows its illnesses by itself, is where the pain is literally where the mistake is where you give an attribute to the body, because the body cannot do anything by itself. You give that to the body. The body cannot do anything by itself. Like matter has no intelligence of itself. It has to be given to it. Now this, if you don't get this right, then there's a lot of trouble, because you get proof that the body can do things. You get proof as if the body is doing things by itself. You get proof of that by what? By your five senses. Now that's where the trouble comes, because literally Joel asks you not to look outside. Joel asks you not to consider your body. Joel asks you not to go for a metaphysical healing or anything. Like, that's not what Joel does. He said no to that. He said, no. We're talking here about a mystical experience. Now this in the 64 classes becomes very obvious. No, it's not about metaphysical healing. This is about a mystical experience of I. Now here is also the direction within, inner flame, spirit, the altar of spirit within. Does that say anything about the body? No, it does not. No, absolutely not. The recognition of this creative energy that is within you literally takes care of all of it, takes care of all that needs to be taken care of. Now it's just for you to come in touch with that, to be still, to listen to the voice, the small voice within, to listen to that. What do you do when you listen to that? Nothing. Not to apply this power in order to facilitate something, to get a certain result, to get rid of your pain, or to get rid of your illnesses, or to get rid of who knows what. No. Abide in me. Literally, stay right here. Experience this. Let yourself be overwhelmed with this love of God for you, within you. Join with that, like only that. Literally allow the awakening of your Christ mind within you. Allow that awakening to take place. Awakest thou, because you are sleeping. If you think that God is gonna heal your body, or God is going to heal your government, and God is going to do this or that for you, if you pray long enough and deep enough, that's not going to happen. So in other words, release the thought of that. Release the temptation to think that that will be taken care of for you. That's not what we do here. Like the only invitation is to come to a mystical experience of the I am that you are, that is already given to you. Your altar just needs to be cleared of all the clutter that's on top of it. If you think that God is going to do something for you, or that you think that there's God and you. Joel repeats this over and over and over. And here there's in fact, so much human suffering connected to this idea that God is going to do something for you. It's like, well, you give all your power away to what? Like to an idea, really. And that idea doesn't exist. Now stay, abide in me, be still, listen. That's the attitude, Joel says. That's the attitude. We will hear Joel say that in the next, say at the end of this talk that we'll listen to. Like the last half hour, we listen to that. So I'm going to share that with you, putting up Joel here. Thank you so much for joining and listening.
Life hasn't become easier for the people of this world. It has just become more physically comfortable, but the burdens they carry in the mind are greater. And that comes from fear of the very discoveries that should set us free. In this age, a question has been raised. It has been answered before by mystics, never given to the world. And so we begin all over again in this age. And we ask the question, is there a transcendental power, or let us put it in plain English, is there a God? Is there a God or a God power that can be brought into human existence to give us the freedom we had in the beginning with God? Or is there a God? Is there a God power that can be brought into human existence to change the nature of man so that in the mind of man there will be no desire to use these powers, whether atomic power or advertising power or propaganda power, to enslave the world? This is the question. You, of course, do not doubt that there is a God. Most people on earth have not yet reached the stage of conviction that there is a God. they might answer that they believe in God, but believing isn't very forceful power, isn't very convincing. But an absolute conviction that there is God, very few on earth have this. But having this conviction, as you know, is not sufficient, because there remains this other step. Of course I know that God is. There would be no effect if there weren't a cause. There would be no such thing as a law of like begetting like. There would be no such thing as mathematical perfection or musical harmony if there were exceptions to rules, or if this were an accidental creation. Oh no. No. We know enough, not only by observation, but more especially by our intuitive faculty. Something within us that says, don't doubt that there is a God. Never doubt there is a God. That's sheer stupidity. There is a God, but how do I bring this God into my individual experience, and thereby discover that if I can bring it into my individual experience, I have the assurance that eventually it will function in the experience of all mankind. If I cannot prove it in a measure for myself, I have no way at all of proving it for you. If I cannot in some measure, tiny measure perhaps, demonstrate the presence and power of God in my individual experience, I cannot share the experience with you because I have nothing to share. I am barren. So with you. You have a household. You have a family. You have friends. It would be ludicrous for you to talk to them about the God you believe in, the God you are convinced of, until you discovered the way of bringing the activity of God into your individual experience, and then you wouldn't have to tell them about it, they would observe it. That is why when you really experience God, you don't have to advertise or proselyte. You merely have to live and to be, and you will soon discover that those who are seeking that level of life will find you, and you'll save yourself many heartaches. By not giving your pearls to the unprepared thought and having them thrown back at you. As long as we remain in this mental realm, the cosmic realm of the universal mind, please remember that we remain in the realm of good and of evil. We can learn the secrets of mind and then find that they are used for the purpose sometimes of malpractice. We can learn the laws of mind and then discover that they are used for propaganda purposes, advertising purposes, and not necessarily advertising of the right nature. Ah, yes, we have access to the mind. We have access to the laws that govern nature. But the next step that we must take is to find access to the world of morals. I'm not speaking merely of sexual morals, I'm speaking now of morals in its complete sense. The morals that govern us in business, morals that govern us in art and literature, morals that govern us in all of our human relationships. We must find access to this in order that these great discoveries may eventually be turned wholeheartedly for the use of man in his legitimate life. You can imagine how wonderful it would be if the tens of thousands of university students who are studying scientific subjects were devoting all of their time and energy to bringing forth these scientific laws for our good, instead of having to realize that 90% of our boys and girls studying scientific subjects are still studying how to destroy us more completely, more quickly, more surely. The change takes place as it takes place in your or my individual experience. When, in addition to our knowledge, we gain something that changes our moral nature. Now, you and I cannot do that of our own accord. Be assured of this, that you cannot decide to be good. Yes, you can. Won't help much. We all know about New Year's resolutions. And the reason is that we just cannot rise higher in our humanhood than the idea of preserving ourselves, benefiting ourselves, helping ourselves, enriching ourselves, and with very little regard for what effect it may have on others. It is only when an element enters our consciousness that is not human, that is neither physical nor mental, that our moral capacity is developed. Spiritual capacity, moral capacity, call it what you will, a something that renders it impossible for us to do evil consciously to another, that renders it impossible for us to work for the injury of others, for the loss of others. Here is where we are at the beginning of a new era. We know now that all humans live by the law of self-preservation. We know that this is what is called the natural law of mankind. That is what makes it possible to legalize war and even to moralize about it. It's perfectly all right to destroy someone else to protect ourselves. That has become ingrained as a human way of life. That is why the entire advertising industry of this nation is what it is. Just a means of taking from the public by any means, regardless of the nature of the harm it may do them. This underlies most of the so-called principles of advertising. Let the buyer beware is still the motto. This cannot change until we discover that a new element must enter human consciousness, and I must first discover a way to bring that element into my consciousness, because if I cannot gain some measure of it, I cannot even tell you about it, much more demonstrate it, much more help you to attain it. And so, until you become aware of the fact that there is a transcendental or God power, spiritual power, and that there is a way of introducing it into your consciousness, you cannot live by it, and you cannot yet teach it to others. Now our problem is this. God is, that is, spiritual power is, spiritual presence is, spiritual integrity is. And as we go back into the revelations of the mystics, we discover not only that it is, but that it is closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. In fact, the realm of this spiritual light is within you, within me. And at least we are coming now to where we can set about opening our consciousness to this experience. The Master revealed at one time that you cannot give communion, you cannot give baptism, you cannot be baptized with water. That the physical act of baptism is but a symbol of the real baptism. And the real baptism is the Spirit which has touched one individual is imparted to those who seek it. In other words, I, if I be lifted up, shall draw men unto me. In other words, every time that any individual has received baptism, the visitation of the Spirit, ordination of the Spirit, that individual immediately is an instrument through which it is imparted to others who seek it. The seeking must be real, it must be sincere. It must not be for some personal motive or purpose. It must be for the experience of the grace of God. Then, when we as individuals open our consciousness to receive the grace of God, we make ourselves receptive to it, and somewhere in the world there is a spiritualized consciousness to impart it to us. There is an old saying that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And there's quite a misunderstanding about this statement. Too many believe that this means that when the student is ready, some human teacher is going to come along to instruct them. And it really doesn't mean this at all. There are too few spiritual teachers in the world. They couldn't possibly reach humanly all those who might be seeking. Oh no, the statement means this. When I, as an individual, am ready when I really and truly, in my heart and soul, desire to know God aright, to receive God's grace, to be freed of my sins, false appetites, hates, enmities, jealousies, other human traits, when I'm ready for that experience, really ready to be made spiritually whole, the teacher appears. And, it may be a teacher 10,000 miles away sitting in meditation who knows nothing about you personally and of whom you know nothing personally, and yet you receive your grace. You receive your freedom. You may never get to know who the teacher was in meditation that reached you, and the teacher may never know you, and may never know that you were reached by his or her meditation, because there is nothing personal in the spiritual kingdom. It is entirely the activity of God consciousness. Therefore, when you are ready for God consciousness, whether or not there is a human teacher available is of no importance. Your teacher, the divine consciousness, will appear and set you free. If a spiritual teacher were limited to helping those who come within range of his physical presence, there would be very few helped on earth. And strangely enough, many of those who do have the good fortune to come into the presence of a spiritual teacher do not receive their freedom or enlightenment. There is a requisite for illumination, and that is the desire to be made whole. Not merely physically healthy or financially abundant or in relationships happy. Oh no. No, there is a kingdom of God, a realm of God about which the human mind knows nothing. Just as a few centuries ago, the human world knew nothing about the realm of mind, knew nothing of that cosmic influence that held all of the secrets of nature, all of the laws of nature. All they knew was to go out and do back-breaking work. So today, mankind has gone a step further in that it now has access to the cosmic realm. But remember, in this realm you still have good and evil operating, and you still have the capacity to use your knowledge and your discoveries for good or for evil. And therefore, your final freedom will not come until a spiritual influence has entered the consciousness of mankind, so that he will not only be empowered with spiritual grace to do good, but will at the same time lose the capacity even to think evil, much more do it. Each one of us who has come this far on the path has an obligation to the world, not to tell it to the world. Far from that. But each one of us has an obligation, and that obligation is, now that we do know that there is a spiritual influence, which we may term the Christ, or the Spirit of God in man, or the indwelling presence, now that we know there is that, we owe it to this world to continuously open our consciousness until we receive it, until it is let loose within us, until it takes over our lives and frees us from this sense of self-preservation and lifts us, if possible, into the opposite extreme, the one revealed by Christ Jesus. Lay down your life, that someone else may live. Not take someone else's life that you may live, not take someone else's property that you may prosper, but lay down your life that others may live. This is the opposite of the human, which is self-preservation, even to kill, to preserve our own life. This is the opposite, to lose our life, if necessary, that others may live. Now, neither you nor I have the capacity to be so noble. So let us not live in a world of imagination and believe that that is just what we would do. Because of ourselves, we wouldn't. If the time comes when we would, or when we do, be assured that by that time we have received the ordination of the Spirit, we have received divine grace, and we are no longer doing it of ourselves. But it is now that I can do all things through Christ. even to the sacrifice of personal selfhood. There is a spirit in man, and this spirit is just as much in the most evil of men as in the most humanly good man. But this spirit must be awakened. Awake, thou that sleepest. Awake, rise, pick up thy bed. This is a dormant influence, the spiritual influence. It must be awakened, and with all of the help that we may receive, the major responsibility rests with us to bring ourselves to the point of conviction that we wish to be made whole, spiritually whole, that we wish to live our lives by the grace of God, not by personal sense. Because in proportion as we reach that point, our teacher appears. The divine consciousness, which is manifest in some individual somewhere on this side of the veil or the other, reaches us, and we are set free, just as Saul of Tarsus was reached by his teacher, even though his teacher had passed beyond this veil. Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you, Joel. So did you lose track of time too? I did. That was great to listen to. So great. So thank you so much for joining me in that and doing this together. Like, that's really where the fun is to me. So really beautiful. So next week we continue with the third talk, and I don't have the title just here or something, like, no, but I'll keep you posted with an email with all the information that you need, and I hope to see you next week. So thank you so much for your presence today, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you for everything. Bye for now.